History often hinges not on grand speeches, but on the exhausted, freezing breath of men standing in the snow waiting to die. The story we are about to tell is not a chronicle of glory. It is a chronicle of survival in the face of absolute destruction. It is the story of a ghost, a man who walked into a catastrophe, turned a slaughter into a stalemate that broke the Third Reich. The year is 1965 and the setting is a modest, quiet living room in Watertown, New York, while the world moves on. Outside, the Beatles are on the radio, the Cold War is freezing over, but inside this room, two old men are locked in a memory. The memory smells of diesel fuel and frozen pine needles. One is Sir von Mantefuel, the aristocrat who commanded the 5th Panzer Army. He sits with the posture of a man used to giving orders that moved nations. Opposite him sits Bruce C. Clarke, a retired engineer. Clarke is a man whose face would not be recognized by 99% of his countrymen. Mantefuel leans forward, eyes narrowing. The silence in the room is heavy. Finally, the German speaks, his voice carrying the weight of 2 decades of bitterness and respect. "It was you," he says. "It was not Bastogne. It was you. You ruined my plan. You are the reason we did not reach Antwerp." To understand the resentment, we must plunge back into the white frozen hell of December 17, 1944. The temperature is hovering near zero. The ground is hard as iron, covered in a deceptive blanket of pristine snow. Underneath that silence, the earth is shaking. For 24 hours, the largest German artillery barrage has been pulverizing lines. This is Operation Walked am Rhein. Hitler's last gamble. The plan is a masterpiece of violence designed to punch a hole in the Allied line. Leading this charge is the 5th Panzer Army, a mechanical leviathan of Tiger tanks and desperate fanatical infantry moving west. Standing directly in their path, like a deer caught in the headlights of a locomotive, is the town of Street Vith. On a map, Street Vith is nothing a speck, a collection of stone houses and a church steeple. But in war geography is destiny. Street Vith. It's at the nexus of a spitterbear of 6 hard surfaced roads. In the mud and snow of the Ardennes, tanks cannot move cross-country. They need roads. If the Germans want to reach the sea, they must drive through Street Vith. It is the choke point. It is the jugular vein of the entire offensive. Into this cauldron drives a solitary jeep. Inside sits Brigadier General Bruce C. Clarke. He is not here to save the day. He is not here to lead a charge. He is simply passing through, a traveler on his way to a routine assignment. He has no idea that he is driving into the mouth of the apocalypse. As Clarke's jeep sputters to a halt outside the common post of the 106th Infantry Division, the air is thick. The air smells of courtesan, unwashed bodies. He steps out, the snow crunching under his boots, and enters the building. The scene that greets him is one of absolute disintegration. Major General Alan Jones is a man whose soul has been crushed. His division, fresh from the States, green and inexperienced, has been shattered in his first 24 hours of combat. Jones has lost 2 of his 3 regiments. 7,000 American boys are currently surrounded on the Schnee-Eifel Ridge. They are miles to the east, being hunted down by German Wolfkappes. The radio in the corner is hissing static. Jones sits in a chair staring at the floor. He looks up at Clarke, his eyes vacant, the eyes of a man who is watching his world burn. "It is over." Jones whispers, his voice cracking. "I have thrown in my last chips. I have nothing left. The Germans are everywhere." At this moment, military protocol dictates that Clarke should turn around. He should get back in his jeep and find a headquarters that is not collapsing. But Bruce Clarke does not turn around. He looks at the broken man in the chair, and he looks at the map on the wall. He sees the red arrows of the German advance converging on this town. He realizes that if Street Vith falls today, the road to the Meuse is wide open. There is nothing behind them, no reserves, no secret army, just open road all the way to the English Channel. In a moment of supreme improvisation, a handshake deal takes place in that smoke-filled room. It is unauthorized and informal. It is the most important transfer of command in the Battle of the Bulge. Jones, essentially abdicating his duty, hands the defense to Clarke. "Take it," Jones seems to say. "It is your funeral." Clarke walks out of the cum and post. He stands on the frozen street. He has no staff. He has no communications network, his own unit combat command, and B of the 7th Armored Division is still miles away fighting traffic. The German timetable says Street Vith must fall by 6 p.m. on December 17th. Clarke checks his watch, the sun is setting. The Germans are late and he decides with a cold, calculating fury that he will make them pay for every minute of delay. The battle that follows is not a set-piece engagement, it is a brawl, it is a chaotic swirling knife fight in the dark. Clarke turns the roads leading into Street Vith into a meat grinder. He stands at the chaotic intersections, a lone general acting as a traffic cop. He stops retreating trucks, he pulls terrified soldiers off the running boards of jeeps. "Who are you?" he barks at a group of shivering men. "We are cooks, General. Our kitchen was blown up. Grab a rifle." Clarke orders. "You are a rifle squad. Now dig in behind that hedge." "We are engineers, sir. We fix bridges, not today. You blow them up, get to the perimeter, and hold the line." He cobbles together a Frankenstein army, stragglers, mechanics, clerks, drivers. He shoves them into the line, filling the gaps. He creates a perimeter out of thin air and sheer willpower, but the Germans are not amateurs. Mantefuel is a master tactician. He sends wave after wave of his best troops against the town, the elite Panzer Division, the 18th Volks Grenadiers. They surge forward out of the mist, their white camouflage making them look like ghosts. What happens next is a masterclass. It is what military theorists call mobile defense, but what the soldiers on the ground call playing tag with the devil. Clarke knows he cannot dig a trench line and hold it. He does not have enough men. If he stays static, the Germans will punch through. So he chooses to move. He keeps his precious Sherman tanks in constant motion. Imagine a deadly game of whack-a-mole. A German column of Panther tanks advances cautiously down a forest road from the east. Suddenly 3 American Shermans roar out. Their 75mm guns bark, crack, thumps, hitting armor-piercing shells slamming into the lead German tank. The Panther shudders, smoke billowing from its turret. The Americans fire, to more rounds shredding the accompanying infantry. Before the Germans can rotate their massive turrets to return fire, the Shermans throw their engines into reverse and vanish. 30 minutes later, German intelligence reports a heavy American tank concentration in the north, but before they can react, those same 3 Shermans have raced 2 miles south and are now ambushing a supply. The German commanders are bewildered. They are reporting to Mantefuel that they are facing an entire armored corps. They report hundreds of American tanks in fortified bunkers. None of it is true, it is smoke and mirrors. It is Bruce Clarke's sleepless eyes, red rim, driving his jeep from one crisis point to another. He is driving physically, grabbing commanders and telling them where to aim their guns. "Hold this hill for 20 minutes, he tells a captain. "Give me 20 minutes, then fall back to the creek." He is trading space for time. He is selling real estate by the yard, charging a price. He is charging the Germans a price in blood. They cannot afford. The combat is visceral and terrifying. In the dense pine forests, visibility is low. Visibility is oft and less than 50 yards. Tanks duel at point-blank range. The sound is deafening, the high-velocity screech of tank shells. The rips-on noise of MG42 machine guns, the terrifying shriek of Nebelwerfer rockets that the G is called screaming me my ES. The ground shakes constantly. The cold is an enemy, as deadly as the Germans. Men's feet turn black with trench foot. Machine gun bolts freeze. Machine gun bolts freeze, shouldn't have to be urinated on to thaw out the metal. The tanks is so cold it strips the skin off bare hands. But inside this frozen cauldron, Clarke's ragtag army holds. December 18th comes and goes. The Germans fail to take the town. December 19th, the pressure mounts. Mantefuel is furious. His tanks are idling, burning precious fuel, waiting for the road. He orders a massive coordinated assault. Artillery hammers the town of Street Vith until the buildings are nothing but jagged teeth. The buildings are nothing but jagged teeth of masonry jutting out of the rubble, but the Americans are still there by December 20th. The situation is becoming critical. The sheer weight of numbers is beginning to tell. The German flanks are wrapping around Street Vith. The German flanks are wrapping around like the arms of a strangler. Clarke realizes that his linear defense is about to snap. He looks at his map covered in grease pencil marks and sees the reality. He is almost surrounded. Most generals would panic. Most would order a desperate breakout to the rear, but Clarke does the opposite. He orders a contraction, pull them in. Pull them, and he orders over the crackling radio, tighten the circle. He draws his forces back from the outlying hills. He compresses them into a tight oval-shaped perimeter just west of the town, the soldiers shivering in their foxholes. They look at the shape of their new position on the map and give it a name. They call it the Goose Egg. It is a fortress. It is a fortress of desperation. Inside the Goose Egg, thousands of men, tanks, trucks, and artillery pieces are packed. It is a target-rich environment for German artillery, but it is also a porcupine of defensive fire. There are no flanks. There are no flanks anymore. It is 360 degrees of war. Hitler, monitoring the situation, loses his patience. The delay at Street Vith is ruining everything. The surprise element is gone. The Allies are rushing reinforcements to the front. He decides to play his trump card. He orders the Führer BGLE, a brigade, into the fight. This is not a regular army unit. This is Hitler's personal guard brigade expanded into a potent armored force. They are commanded by Otto Ernst Remer. Remer is a fanatical Nazi, the man who crushed the plot to kill Hitler in July. He is not interested in tactics. He is interested in annihilation. He leads his brigade towards Street Vith with orders to crush the Goose Egg no matter the cost. On December 21st and 22nd, the violence reaches. A crescendo. Remer's tanks slam into the American lines. They slam into the American lines with the force of a sledgehammer. The snow turns black with soot and red with blood. American tank destroyers hiding in the ruins of barns engage in duels with superior German Tigers. A single American bazooka team shivering in a ditch waits until a German half-track is 10 feet away before firing. Turning the vehicle into a fireball. Clarke is everywhere. His jeep is riddled with shrapnel holes. He has not slept. He has not slept in 4 days. He is fueled by adrenaline and caffeine. He knows that the end is coming. The ammunition is running low. The medical supplies are gone. The Goose Egg is shrinking. And then nature turns against them. May heavy snowfall begins blanketing the battlefield, hiding the German movements. Under the cover of the storm, German infantry begin to infiltrate the gaps between the American foxholes. General Matthew Ridgway, commanding the XV.I Airborne Corps from a safe distance, radios Clarke. His order is simple and suicidal: hold Street Vith, victory or death. Clarke receives the order. He looks at his men, hollow-cheeked, freezing, bleeding, but still fighting. He knows that victory is impossible and death is a waste. He knows that a dead soldier cannot kill Germans tomorrow. He makes a decision that could get him court-martialed. He decides to disobey the spirit of the order to save the soul of his army. He decides it is time to leave. But how do you withdraw 20,000 men and thousands of vehicles from a death trap? How do you pull a cork out of a bottle without spilling the wine? Standard military doctrine says retreat at night. Use the darkness. Clarke looks at the icy roads. He looks at the exhausted drivers. Tanks will slide into ditches. Trucks will collide. Panic will set in if the Germans fire a single flare and see the chaos. Their artillery will turn the retreat into a massacre. So Bruce Clarke decides to do the unthinkable. He decides to gamble the lives of every man under his command on a bluff. He decides to retreat in broad daylight. The morning of December 23, 1940, dawns with a sky the color of bruised iron. The temperature is so low that the oil in the tank engines has turned to sludge inside the Goose Egg. The air is filled with a strange, purposeful tension. Drivers are warming up their vehicles. Sergeants are checking load straps. Wounded men are being lifted onto the backs of 2.5-ton trucks, their groans muffled by the roar. Bruce Clarke is about to execute the most dangerous magic trick of his career. He is betting everything on the psychology. He knows the German mind. He knows that German doctrine relies on logic, and there is nothing logical about this. About an army retreating in broad daylight, while under siege at 900 hours the movement begins. To the German observers peering through their binoculars from the surrounding hills, what they see is baffling. They expect to see panic, they expect to see a disorganized rabble fleeing for their lives. Instead, they see American armored columns moving with the precision of a parade ground maneuver. The tanks are spaced perfectly. The turrets are traversed toward the enemy. The trucks are moving at a steady, deliberate pace. In the command post of the Führer BGL, it brigade, the reports cause hesitation. The Americans are moving. An intelligence officer reports, but they are not running, they are shifting formation. The German commander's pause. Is this a feint? Is Clarke preparing a massive counter-attack on their flank? The ghost of the last 6 days haunts them every time they thought. Every time they thought they had the Americans pinned, Clarke had punched them in the nose. They freeze, they decide to wait. They decide to wait and see, they decide to regroup for a defense against an attack that is never coming. That hesitation is all. That hesitation is all Clarke needs while the main body of the American force streams westward through the narrow escape corridor. While the main force leaves, a small group of men stays behind. These are the men of the rear guard, elements of the decimated 87th Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron, and a handful of tank destroyers. If this were a movie, if this were a Hollywood movie, there would be thousands of them. In reality, there are barely enough men to field a softball team. In some sectors, it is less than 30 men holding a line meant for a regiment. But these 30 men fight like demons possessed. They are the ultimate actors in Clarke's theater of deception. They drive their light M8 Greyhound armored cars frantically. They drive from one firing position to another. They fire a burst from a 50 caliber machine gun from a ridge, then race away. They race 500 yards to a valley and fire a mortar round. They scream orders to imaginary platoons filling the air. They fill the air with so much noise and lead that the Germans are convinced the main American line is still intact and ready. Ready to fight to the death. Imagine being one of those men. You are watching your friends leave. You see the taillights. You see the taillights of the last truck disappearing into the mist, carrying the warmth, the food, the safety, leaving you behind. And you are staying behind in the snow with 5 rounds of ammunition, left staring down the barrel of a Tiger tank. The courage required in those final hours is beyond measure. As the sun climbs higher, the deception holds the long snake. Of American vehicles, ambulances, fuel, trucks, damaged tanks, slithers out of the trap. They cross the crucial bridges over the Somme River. The drivers are white-knuckled, expecting a German shell to slam into them at any second, but the shells do not come. The German artillery is pounding empty forests, suppressing ghost positions that Clarke abandoned hours ago. By the afternoon, the truth finally begins to dawn on Montefiore. The resistance is slackening, the volume of fire is dropping. He realizes he has been duped. He screams into the radio, ordering an all-out assault, advance, attack, crush them. The German panzers roar forward, crushing the empty foxholes, rolling over the abandoned equipment. They surge toward the town. They smash through the thin screen of the rear guard. Those brave few who stayed behind are finally overrun. Killed or captured, their job done. Montefiore less angst. Reach the key road junctions. They reach the bridges, but they are met. They are met with a deafening, earth-shattering roar. Boom, the bridges blow up in their faces. Clarke has timed it. Clarke has timed it to the second. As the dust settles, the German commanders look across the river. The Americans are gone. The trap is empty. The Germans enter Street Vith. On the evening of December 23rd, they have captured the town. They have won the battle, but as Montefiore walks through the rubble-strewn streets, stepping over the debris of war, he feels no sense of triumph. He looks at the calendar. It is December 23rd. He pulls out the operational map. He traces the line where he is supposed to be. By now, his tanks should be crossing the Meuse River. They should be threatening Brussels. Instead, they are standing in a wrecked town in the middle of nowhere. Their fuel tanks running on fumes, their ammunition depleted, their soldiers exhausted. The American defense of Street Vith has cost the Germans 6 irreplaceable days. In modern warfare, time is the only commodity you cannot manufacture. though 6 days were the difference between victory and defeat. While Clarke was buying time with blood, General Eisenhower was rushing reinforcements to the front. The 101st Airborne had dug in at Bastogne. The weather was clearing, bringing the terrifying power of the Allied Air Force back into play. The Battle of the Bulge would rage on. Men would die in the snow for another month, but the outcome was decided here in this small, ugly fight. The German offensive had lost its momentum. The coiled spring of the blitzkrieg had been stretched until it snapped. Years pass, the snow melts, the dead are buried, the towns are rebuilt, the world moves into the atomic age. The story of the Battle of the Bulge becomes dominated by the legend of Bastogne. We remember General Nicole if saying nuts to the German surrender demand. We remember Patton's prayer for weather. We remember the glory, but Street Vith fades into obscurity. It was not a victory in the traditional sense. It was a retreat, it was a delaying action. It is hard to make a movie about a man who retreats. And so we return to 1965 to that quiet room in Watertown. Bruce Clarke is 63 years old. He is a retired four-star general now, but he lives a quiet life. He never wrote an memoir to glorify himself. He never hired a publicist. He is a soldier, a professional who did the job and went home. Mantifuel, his hair now white, looks at his former adversary. The bitterness has faded, replaced by the clarity of history. He speaks the final verdict on the battle, a verdict that no historian could ever capture better. It is a pity, Mantifuel says, that your people do not know the name of Street Vith as well as they know Bastogne. Because at Bastogne we hit a rock and we simply flowed around it, but at Street Vith you were the sand in the machine. Sand in the machine that is the legacy of Bruce Clarke. He did not destroy the machine, he clogged it. He ground its gears to a halt. He forced the master race with its superior tanks to slow down to a crawl. As the documentary credits roll, we are left with the image of that lone Jeep in the snow driving back and forth, holding the fate of the free world together with nothing but bluff, grit, and the stubborn refusal to admit defeat. In the end, the ghost general of Street Vith proves that sometimes the most heroic thing a soldier can do is not to charge, but simply to stand his ground, look the devil in the eye and say, "Not today." If you want more hardcore breakdowns of history, its deadliest miscalculations, smash that like button and subscribe. I am your strategy observer. I will see you on the next battlefield.